I know what I did was wrong. But if I'm honest, a part of me wanted him to walk in. To see me like that. To see what I'd become without him noticing. It started with a laugh. Just a stupid, careless laugh as I leaned back against the kitchen counter, feeling the warmth of someone else's breath against my neck. I shouldn't have let it happen, but I did. It felt too good, too easy, and for a moment, I just wanted to forget how empty the house had felt lately. I didn't even hear the front door open. But then I felt it. That shift in the air, like a storm about to break. I turned, and there he was, standing in the doorway, his eyes so dark I couldn't tell if it was anger or something else that flickered in them. My heart stopped. I expected him to shout, to leave, to hate me right there in that kitchen. But he didn't move. His jaw clenched, his fists curling and uncurling at his sides. The other guy froze, looking at me like he was waiting for me to fix it, to say something, anything. But all I could do was look at him, at the man I'd been with for 3 years, and see something in his eyes I hadn't seen in so long. Hunger. Not just for me, but for the way I looked when I thought no one was watching. For the way I bit my lip when I felt wanted. For the way I tried to catch my breath as his gaze pinned me in place, making me feel naked even though I wasn't. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate, and I swear the entire world went silent except for the sound of my pulse pounding in my ears. I opened my mouth to say I was sorry, but no words came out. Just this trembling breath, this heat that crawled up my neck, flooding my cheeks as he stopped in front of me. His hand lifted, pausing in the air, and for a moment, I thought he was going to push me away. But he didn't. He touched my face, gently, like he was memorizing the shape of me, and I felt something break open inside me. Something that had been waiting, aching, for him to see me again. And that's when I realized. He wasn't leaving. I guess I should explain how it got to this point. We'd been together for 3 years, living in that tiny apartment with chip tiles and a window that rattled when it rained. I used to love how we'd dance in the kitchen at midnight, how we'd laugh so hard the neighbors would bang on the walls, how we'd fall asleep tangled together like it was the only way we knew how to breathe. But somewhere along the way the laughter turned quiet. We stopped reaching for each other in the middle of the night. We stopped looking at each other like we used to. I missed him. Even when he was right there beside me, I missed him. I tried to tell him about how lonely it felt to be touched without being seen. About how I needed him to look at me, really look at me, the way he used to when we were new, when every touch felt like a promise. But every time I opened my mouth, he was too tired or distracted or just somewhere else. So when that guy from work started paying attention, it felt like rain after a long drought. I told myself it was harmless, that it was just flirting, that I just needed to feel wanted for a moment. But it turned into more when he leaned in, when his hand brushed mine, when I didn't pull away. I didn't plan for it to happen in our kitchen. I didn't plan for him to walk in. But maybe deep down I wanted him to. Maybe I wanted him to see that I was still here, waiting for him to claim me the way he used to. To fight for me, for us, even if it was messy and wrong. Because when I saw the way he looked at me, standing there with another man's hand on my waist, I felt something spark between us that I thought was gone forever. I felt alive again. Seen. Wanted. And that terrified me just as much as it thrilled me. Because now, standing there with his hand on my face, his eyes searching mine, I didn't know what he was going to do next. I just knew I didn't want him to stop looking at me, could barely breathe. His thumb brushed against my cheek, and it was such a small touch, but it felt like fire. Like every nerve under my skin woke up, reaching for him, remembering how it used to feel when we couldn't keep our hands off each other. The guy from work was still standing there frozen, his hand slipping away from my waist. I could see the confusion in his eyes, the uncertainty, like he wasn't sure if he should leave or apologize or pretend none of this ever happened. But he didn't leave. And neither did he. He leaned closer, so close I could feel the warmth of his breath against my lips, so close I could see the way his lashes trembled as he blinked. His hand moved down, hovering over the place on my waist where the other man's hand had been just a moment before. And he looked at me. Really looked at me. Like he was seeing me for the first time in months. "Is this what you want?" he asked, his voice low, rough, almost breaking. I wanted to say no, to say I was sorry, to say I didn't mean for it to happen. But the words wouldn't come. Because the truth was I didn't know what I wanted. All I knew was that the way he was looking at me made my heart slam against my ribs, made my knees feel weak, made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in so long. And then his eyes shifted to the other man, a dark, unreadable look passing between them. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, like a storm cloud hovering over us, ready to break. I should have pulled away. I should have told him to leave, to walk out the door and never look back. But I didn't. Because in that moment, with his hand brushing against my waist and his eyes locked on mine, I realized how much I had missed being wanted like this. Not just softly, not just politely, but with that raw, unspoken hunger that made the world disappear. My breath caught as he leaned in closer, close enough that I could feel the heat between us, close enough that I could smell the familiar scent of him, clean soap, warm skin, and something that was just him. His forehead rested against mine, and I felt his chest rise and fall, shaky and uneven, matching the way I was breathing. And for a moment, the world stood still. Because in that silence I could feel it, the tension, the confusion, the fear, the desire. All of it tangled together, heavy and electric. And I knew this was the moment where everything would change. He liked that. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was him, maybe it was me, or maybe it was that heavy, impossible silence pulling us closer. All I know is that one moment we were breathing the same air, trembling in that space between fear and wanting, and the next, his hand was on my waist, right where the other man's had been. His grip was gentle, but there was something in it that made me shiver, a quiet claim, a reminder of every moment we had ever shared, every night we had fallen asleep with our bodies pressed together, every morning I woke up reaching for him. The other man didn't speak. He was still there, close enough that I could feel the tension rolling off him, close enough that I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. But he didn't leave. And neither did we. His eyes flicked to the man beside me, then back to me, searching, asking a question without words. My breath hitched as I nodded, a tiny trembling movement because I didn't trust my voice not to break. And then slowly his hand slid from my waist down to my hip, his thumb brushing circles that made my skin heat beneath the thin fabric of my dress. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure they both could hear it. It was wrong. Every part of this was wrong. But the way his eyes darkened, the way his jaw tightened, the way his hand tightened just slightly on my hip, none of it felt wrong in that moment. It felt like everything we had been trying to ignore for so long was suddenly too heavy to carry alone. The air felt thick, warm, electric. I could feel the heat of both of them standing so close, the way their breathing changed, shallow and uneven, matching mine. I could smell him, and the other man's cologne, mixing in the air, making me dizzy. His other hand came up to my face again, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear, and I closed my eyes because it was too much to look at him while he touched me like that. My lips parted as I tried to breathe, but all I could feel was the heat, the trembling under my skin, the ache in my chest that was pulling me toward him, toward them, toward the edge of something I didn't have a name for. And then I felt it. His forehead against mine, his breath on my lips, so close, the world shrinking down to the space between us. "Are you sure?" he whispered, and his voice was so soft, so careful, like he was holding me in his words. And I whispered back, "Don't stop." Because I didn't want him to stop. I didn't want to pretend I didn't need this, didn't need him, didn't need to feel alive again. And in that breathless moment, with the other man watching, waiting, I let myself fall into the warmth of his touch, the promise in his eyes, the unspoken agreement that whatever happened next would change everything. And I wanted it. His lips didn't touch mine, not at first. They hovered, close enough that I could feel the warmth of every shaky breath, close enough that I could taste the promise of what might happen if I moved just an inch closer. My eyes fluttered open, and I saw it, how dark his gaze was, how it dropped to my mouth before meeting my eyes again. It was like he was asking me one more time if I wanted this. If I was ready to let go of the guilt, the fear, the endless quiet between us. And I was. I tilted my chin, just barely, and that was all it took. His lips met mine softly, so softly it made me gasp, like he was afraid to break me. But it was that softness that broke me. That made the heat rush up my neck, made my knees go weak, made me cling to the front of his shirt just to keep myself standing. The kiss deepened, slow and searching, like he was trying to remember every part of me he'd forgotten. Like he was learning me all over again, tracing the shape of my mouth with his breathing me in. I forgot for a moment that we weren't alone, until I felt the other man's hand, tentative, brushing against my arm, waiting to see if I would pull away. I didn't. I couldn't. Because instead of fear, a shiver ran through me, heat pooling low in my belly, my breath catching as I pulled back from the kiss to look at him, at both of them. They looked at each other, and I saw the uncertainty, the tension, but also something else. A silent agreement, a flicker of curiosity, a question neither of them dared to ask out loud. My chest rose and fell, my breath shallow, my skin burning as the other man's hand moved to my shoulder. Then slowly down my back, a feather-light touch that made me arch toward him without meaning to. I heard the sound that escaped my lips, soft and trembling, and I saw the way my lover's eyes darkened at the sound. No one spoke. There was just the sound of breathing, the soft rustle of clothes, the quiet gasps that filled the space as their hands found places on my body that had been starved for attention, for connection, for something real. I felt surrounded by warmth, by the weight of their attention, by the careful way they touched me, like they were both trying to memorize me in their own ways. I closed my eyes, letting my head fall back as one of them kissed the side of my neck, slow and hot, while the other's hand slid to the small of my back, pulling me closer. The world outside didn't exist anymore. All that existed was the press of lips against my skin, the trembling in my legs, the way their hands moved over me like a promise, slow and unsure but hungry, so hungry, like we were all standing at the edge of something we couldn't turn back from. And in that moment I didn't care. I didn't care about the guilt, the questions, the fear of what it meant. All I cared about was the way they made me feel alive, wanted, seen. And I knew there was no going back. I wish I could explain what it felt like in that moment. The way the world seemed to blur around the edges, the way every breath felt too loud in the quiet, the way their hands on my skin made every thought slip away until there was nothing left but the feeling of being seen, wanted, held. One of them pressed closer behind me, his breath warm against the back of my neck, his hand sliding down my arm slowly, carefully, like he was afraid I might disappear if he touched me too quickly. I felt the heat of his chest against my back, steady, grounding, making me lean into him without thinking. In front of me, his eyes searched mine, dark and questioning, but there was no hesitation in the way his hand cupped my jaw, tilting my face toward him. His thumb brushed over my lower lip, and I felt my lips part, felt the soft tremble that went through me as I let out a shaky breath. "Look at me," he whispered, and I did. And in that moment, with the other man's hands on my waist and his eyes locked on mine, I felt something inside me shatter. Something that had been cold and quiet for so long. Something I didn't even know I was holding on to. I wanted to cry, to laugh, to collapse into them, into this moment, because it was the first time in so long that I felt alive, felt wanted, felt like I was allowed to want something back. His lips found mine again, not soft this time but deeper, hotter, like a promise and a plea all at once. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his shirt as I pressed closer, needing him to feel how badly I needed this, needed him, needed them. Behind me, the other man's hand slid up, brushing the sides of my ribs, making me gasp into the kiss. I could feel the warmth of his breath against the side of my neck, the way he hesitated before pressing a slow, deliberate kiss to my shoulder, his lips soft but the heat behind it making me shiver. I felt surrounded, claimed, tangled in heat and breath and trembling touches that made the room spin. And I didn't pull away. I let my head fall back against the man behind me, breaking the kiss as I tried to catch my breath, my eyes fluttering open to see the way he looked at me, his pupils dark, his chest rising and falling as uneven as mine. Their hands moved over me with quiet urgency, sliding down my sides, brushing over places that made me arch and gasp, made the heat between us unbearable. Every touch felt amplified, every brush of fingers, every press of lips, every shared breath was like a spark against my skin. I was dizzy from it, from them. From the way they watched me, the way they touched me, the way they made me feel like I was the only thing that mattered in that moment. And maybe I was. Because in that heated, trembling moment, there was no past, no guilt, no fear of what tomorrow would bring. There was only this. The weight of his gaze, the warmth of his lips, the careful strength of hands that pulled me closer until I was pressed between them, until I felt their breath mixing with mine, until the world went quiet except for the soft, helpless sounds leaving my lips. And in that silence I let go. After, we didn't speak for a long time. The room was quiet except for our breathing, soft and uneven, like the last tremors of a storm passing. I could feel their warmth on my skin, the imprint of their hands still there, the ghost of their lips brushing along my neck, my collarbone, my mouth. I stood between them, trembling, the air around us charged and heavy, the scent of sweat and warmth in something I couldn't name clinging to the room. My heart was still pounding, but slower now, softer, like it was reminding me I was still here, still alive. He reached for my hand first. His fingers slid through mine, grounding me, pulling me back to the moment as he lifted our joined hands to his lips, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to the back of my hand. His eyes met mine and there was no anger there. Just something tender, raw, real. Behind me, the other man's hand rested lightly on my hip, his thumb brushing small, careful circles that made me close my eyes, made me lean back into him just for a moment. I felt his forehead press against the back of my shoulder, and he let out a slow breath, like he was letting something go. In that silence, I felt safe. I didn't know what this meant for tomorrow. If we would fall apart. If it would break us or remake us into something new. If it was a mistake or if it was exactly what we needed to finally wake up. All I knew was that I didn't feel empty anymore. I felt wanted, seen, held, claimed. And when I looked up into his eyes, I saw something there I hadn't seen in so long, a softness, a hunger, a promise that maybe, just maybe, we could find each other again. And maybe I could find myself too. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his thumb brushing my cheek with a softness that made tears sting my eyes. I blinked them away, letting out a shaky laugh that broke the silence, and he smiled, just a little, the corners of his eyes crinkling the way they used to when we first fell in love. We didn't need to say anything, because in that quiet I knew. He saw me, and I saw him. And in the soft warmth of that moment, with his hand in mine and the other man's breath still warm against my skin, I realized something I would never forget. Sometimes what breaks us is what saves us.